of COVID-19, we've tried to keep you up to date as much as possible. And over those, what I called a long, dark winter, we've asked much of you at times. We've asked for sacrifices, whether it be businesses or families. And we've asked an awful lot of a group that is incredibly special to all of us and important to this state's future. That's our students. You're going to hear from a student. You're going to hear from educators across Minnesota as we recognize that this long battle, and I asked a couple times, and I'll talk about this, for us to buckle down and have a goal line stand. Well, we're on offense now, and it's our time to take back the things that make life so wonderful for us, to give those opportunities. And so I'm going to walk you through a little bit here with the goal that it's time to get our students back in school, and we can do that now safely. We have a very robust plan I'll talk you through. You'll hear from Deputy Commissioner Heather Mueller, and then more importantly, you're going to hear from the folks that have made education possible during this time. And I want to be very clear. The sacrifices that were made by students and parents and teachers and administrators and school boards and everyone across this state, learning continued to happen. But we know that the best learning happens when they're in classrooms and when we're with educators in front of them and they're with their peers. And so we're going to take a little time today. I'll walk you through a little bit of this. Again, you'll hear some of the details on this. The good news is going to continue to come. We have made extraordinary progress in COVID-19. We are at case positivity rates that mirror last summer. Some of that is the nature of this virus, but a whole lot of it is because of decisions that you chose to make, whether it be masking or social distancing, or the sacrifices we've especially asked of our students and small businesses to stay in distant learning or to make adjustments. Vaccines are here and they're ramping up. We're doing more than 100,000 doses a week. Even in the midst of a snowstorm, we're doing the best we can to make sure that those are getting out within 72 hours. And because of the hard work of a whole bunch of people, public-private partnerships, partners across this state, from hospitals to pharmacies to Minnesota's public health, we're now getting those out as fast as any place in the country, and it is making a difference. We're on our way to ending the pandemic. I have to say, that's not something that we've been able to say a whole lot. And I was just mentioning to the folks who are in this room, it's usually not delivering the most positive news when we're here. This news is positive. We're beating this thing. We're getting the vaccines out. Minnesotans are responding accordingly, and it is showing. Late in the fall, we predicted it. We knew it was there. The models showed it, that we were experiencing exponential growth. We popped above that line of about 15% positivity where things were going to overwhelm our hospital systems. We've seen this happen across the country. I asked us to dig in, to hold a goal line stand, and we did it. We did not overwhelm our hospitals. Every single Minnesotan who needed care and a hospital bed and the treatments got them, and we kept that as stable as we possibly could. We dialed back to save lives, and we did it, and I said in December, the goal of those dial backs was to stop the surge that would come after the holidays with the vaccines on our doorstep, and we would accelerate into that. And the goal is to start by getting all our K-5 students back in the classroom and to move forward from there. You did it. It's working. This was just an idea of this. And just for now, cases per 100,000, our neighboring states rank 1st, 2nd, 7th, and 8th in tests amongst cases amongst 100,000 residents. Minnesota ranks 30th. The same thing is true of 7, 8, 17 amongst deaths per 100,000. We are 35th. The sacrifices you made saved lives. The sacrifices you made kept us underneath where we could have been, and the sacrifices you made make sure that more people are going to go back to school, they're going to stay in school, and we're going to open our businesses and keep them open. So new case growth at the lowest level since summer. This is a positive. We know more about COVID. We have more tools to fight it, and I mentioned this last week. It may have a little something to do with cold weather, but Minnesota's use of masking in indoor settings has skyrocketed, and we're now approaching that 90% number that starts to make a difference. And just so you know, CDC talks about that. If we can up from, say, 85% to 90%, they can show us numbers of lives saved. It's a simple thing we can all do, and it makes a difference. Percentage of tests coming back is now below 5% for the first time. That went above 15% in December when hospitals reached 95% capacity, and we were reporting over 100 deaths per day. We reported 2 today. That's 2 too many, but that's the situation that we're in. Hospital bed usage is now back down to almost pre-COVID levels. And again, you see what's happened here. The summer spike that shot us up came back down, and then the fall one that we predicted, and we knew it was coming, and we prepared for it. And those two little spikes you see on the right side, the first one at the top is Thanksgiving, the second one is Christmas. Here's the good news. We had data to show us by the middle of summer that we were going to see a fall spike. We do not see that right now. Now, I want to caution folks, variants and changes in behavior can have an impact on that. But at this point in time, we're doing it. So there's progress. Supply is still limited around vaccines. President Biden and the administration has promised 600 million doses, which the two for that, 300 million doses to the American public by late July or August. The good news is those most vulnerable, 65 and above, we have already vaccinated about 50% of those. We are now seeing almost no cases whatsoever in long-term care facility, and the most vulnerable amongst us are protected by the decisions that you have made and that we have made. We're now up to 943,000. Probably by the time some of this goes to print, by Friday, we'll have passed 1 million doses given, basically over a 6-week period. 40% of seniors, that's of today, it'll continue to grow. Educators and child care providers. We have one of 8 states that focused heavily on child care providers and educators for the sole purpose of being here today to be able to safely reopen our schools with a high degree of certainty that with the mitigation measures we will put in place in those schools, with the hard work of local folks who know how to do this, and with vaccines and an only in the nation testing program for educators, we can do this. We're activating that broad network so everyone can get there. How did we get here? I've talked about this and you've seen this since last March. It's always a balancing act. Certainly, as we've said, if you want to make sure no one gets COVID, you would make sure you shut everything down. There'd be no interactions among people. That's not possible, practical, and it has its own side effects to it. So we have done things to try and balance, as I've said. We've decided that it wasn't prudent to make sure that everybody got COVID or that our death rate skyrocketed. We made different decisions on that, and we balanced it between the economy and well-being. And when we're seeing progress, it's time to move. And we're seeing the progress in controlling the spread of COVID. We're seeing the progress in the vaccines. It's now time to talk about, we saw a little bit last week with the economy, and now you're going to see this well-being part of it, of getting our students back in school. So students are going to be back in the classroom. Here's what we're going to do. Safe in-person learning is a public health imperative. Last week, the CDC provided the roadmap. The good news is Minnesota's a lot further down that road than even the CDC was. They asked for things that would be nice to have, like testing teachers. We have the most robust one in the nation. They asked for nice to have things, vaccinating educators before they go back. We are already a long ways down that road. And then in addition to providing PPE and doing the things that you're going to hear from the folks who are here, listening to local educators about the unique situation in their own building and their own communities. And Dr. Mueller will have a little bit more on that. Many of our students have already been back. I think you'll hear from superintendents who their K-5 kids have been in all except 13 days since this thing started. It has not hit all areas the same, and our safe learning plan that was developed last July gave that control to local schools to work in conjunction with healthcare providers in the state to provide that safe environment. This simply makes sure that we're taking that one step further. Our expectations is that schools will be able to offer some in-person learning, and my goal is to try and see the best we can to get 5 days a week in all of our schools for all of our students in a safe manner. That's the goal by March 8th. We can do this, Minnesota. The sacrifices we made, the things we've learned, and the efforts we put into it, and hearing from, and you're going to hear from a student to tell you this, we asked a lot. We asked you to give up Christmas in some cases with your family and to not have the big gatherings that all of us wanted to. Well, here's the payoff. We're going to give that present to all of these students because they're going to go back, and you're going to hear from a senior who's going to get a chance to do prom, going to get a chance to do those state tournaments, going to get a chance to graduate, and more importantly, going to get a chance to sit in those classrooms with friends who will remember for the rest of their life. This is a gift that we've done while protecting people's lives. So in-person learning does have some risk to it. I don't want to downplay the fact of this, that we always have to make sure we're mitigating. I will stress it again, and Dr. Mueller will stress it. Our nation-leading on-site testing gives us a huge advantage. We're already above 25% of educators vaccinated, and I'm here to tell you today we're going to bump that to 18,000 doses. We'll go out next week and can try and continue to do that. We will have the bulk of our educators vaccinated by that March 8th deadline, and that will give another added protection. And I want to all the parents listening out there, the educators and those especially with underlying health conditions and the things we're doing, we're focusing on making sure that we're not spreading. But we also know our students can get it, and there's asymptomatic spread, but we don't want to put them at any unneeded risk too. So we're expanding this testing to allow all students. And again, this is a choice parents can make, but our testing programs are going to be available whether in-home or at local testing programs focused on 12 to 25-year-olds. Get your kids tested. Mine is an 8th grader and is back at playing club sports, and we're getting him tested after he does this once a week or so to make sure that that's going well. And it is, because these folks are doing the protocols and they're making it work. So we have that expansive capacity that's going to go even further. We listen to folks all over the state. You're going to hear from them here in just a minute on the need to get our students back, the need to do it safely. I think the unique thing you're going to hear about Minnesota is the stakeholders across the spectrum, parents, students, teachers, administrators, school support staff, school boards, are all in agreement that we've got a plan, we can do this together. It puts a lot of those decisions in a partnership way of doing it, and it's working, and it has been working for them. So students, we're ready to go. We're going to get back in school, folks. We're going to do it safely. We're going to beat this thing. And I think I've said, and I've been asked on numerous occasions, what do I want to do first thing when this thing is over? I want to stand in a crowded hallway and listen to students laugh with their classmates. That's what I want to do. And that's the work that you've done has enabled us to do that. And this is an exciting day, Minnesota. It's we're not out of the woods. I don't want to make us believe that there's not some things that we still need to do, but the work has enabled us to do exactly what we wanted to do, control this virus, save lives, and move back to the things that we love. And with that, I would like to welcome up Dr. Heather Mueller, the Deputy Commissioner of the Minnesota Department of Education, to give a little more in-depth detail on this, and then we'll hear a little bit from Lieutenant Governor and our folks who are I would say this for Lieutenant Governor, will speak to you as Lieutenant Governor. She'll also speak to you as the mom of a elementary school student who we talk often on this, how excited she is, who's back in school and loving every minute of it. Dr. Mueller?
Thank you, Governor. And good afternoon, everybody. So we want to walk through a little bit about this plan, a little more in depth, and give you some additional details. But before we do that, I'd like to dive just a little bit deeper into thinking about how this is really going to be able to help impact not only our students and our families, but our communities in general. And I can speak not only as the Deputy Commissioner at the Department of Education, but also as the mom of a senior in high school and a sophomore in high school. And I cannot say how thrilled I am to have our students back in a hybrid learning model and what that means for them every single day. We know that our seniors last year, their junior year looked vastly different at the end of the year, and their entire year that they had built for their academic career, and the things that they've missed that we've all had the opportunity to experience. Things like dances and athletics and activities and proms and graduations, and the ability to be able to do that is something that is incredibly important. And the work and the effort that our community has done, that our state has done, and that our governor and lieutenant governor have done to ensure that we are building the structure that we need in order to bring our students back is incredibly important. And I want to also acknowledge the fact that we have a number of school districts and charter schools across the state who have had the opportunity to have their students in person since the fall. They have been able to use those mitigation strategies. They have been able to partner with their communities, work with their local public health, and to be able to really think of different unique ways to be able to bring students in for a variety of reasons. And that's not the ability everywhere. And so what we are looking at is putting forward a plan and an opportunity for this to be the option everywhere in the state of Minnesota. So as we think about that, we really wanted to focus on a couple of things. Beginning on February 22nd, our middle schools and our high schools can choose either a hybrid learning model or an in-person learning model with specific mitigation strategies. And as the governor talked about, first and foremost, we know that we have one of the best testing processes in the nation for screening. Every single teacher who is in either a hybrid learning model or in a in-person learning model has the opportunity to test in their building every 2 weeks. And so that means that we are able to identify any asymptomatic spread that's happening in our schools, and they have the opportunity to know exactly where they stand. And so that's one really important component, not only for our students, but it also is a bit of peace of mind, quite frankly, for our staff members, so that they know that as they are working with our students every single day, that what they're doing with their students and when they go home to their families continues to be safe. We also know that we are building a model where our students between the ages of 12 and 25 have the option to go to community testing sites and also to utilize mail-in saliva testing so that they have the opportunity to see where they're at in their testing, and they know whether or not they are also COVID positive or are asymptomatic and are not aware of their ability to spread that. And then also thinking about not only those two components, but also the fact that our students are wearing masks. They are incredibly conscientious, whether they're in school, whether they're participating in athletics or activities. They are consistently utilizing those masks to help to not only protect themselves, but to protect the people around them. And so those are really important pieces that we're going to be able to continue to maintain as we are moving forward with additional students coming into both in-person and hybrid. Now, we know that our schools have also worked a lot with their regional support teams to go into an in-person model and to publicly announce those plans. If they have those plans in place, those plans should continue. The work that our school leaders have done with their staffs, with their communities, with their school communities are incredibly important, and the role of this is never to undermine that work. It is, however, to provide some opportunities for us to be able to build on that collaboration. As a result of having these unique and independent personalities essentially in every single community, we also know that it's going to look different in a lot of places. It may be that beginning on February 22nd, we are going to have some school districts or charter schools who have not had their students in will be able to have their students back into a hybrid model. We will also know, and that will be 5 days a week. We know that some may need to start at 3 days a week, right? It's going to be dependent on being able to, like what the governor identified, is to be able to give our staff time to do the prepping that they need, because in addition to not only making sure that we're providing this option for every single student across the state of Minnesota to be in person or in a classroom, we are also really cognizant and thoughtful of the fact that we do have some students and families who choose not to, that they feel as though they are safer by being able to learn from a distance. And we are going to maintain that because we know how incredibly important that is. And so in being able to provide not only an in-person learning option for every single student that wants it, but also a distance learning option for every single student that wants that, we need to give our educators the opportunity to do what they need to do to be able to support our students in the way that they need to do that. And so that's why you might see it looks a little bit different from community to community, but the basic underlying premise is the same, is that for every single student that would like to be in an in-person setting, we are trying to provide every single strategy and mitigation approach necessary to be able to do that. And that's in partnership with our school leaders. We also know that one of the things that we identified when we moved into having a January opportunity for our elementary students to move back to an in-person or a hybrid model, we also know that we implemented a rolling start. And that was because at that point in time, we still had higher levels of community spread. We knew that we wanted to take it very slowly and give the opportunity to take a very slow walk back into having students come back in. Because of the work that you have done across the state and because of the leadership of the governor and lieutenant governor, we have the opportunity to now repeal that rolling start. And so what that means is, instead of starting 9th grade and 10th grade can be the first 2 weeks, and then you can 2 weeks later bring in 11th and 12th grade, it means that you can bring back 9, 10, 11, and 12 all at one time into a hybrid model or into an in-person model, depending on what that looks like for you and for your school community. So it's really important that we are able to identify that, one, that rolling start is able to shift, because that means that students are able to come back earlier and gets our students back in, and it also gives opportunities again to increase the number of students that are participating in in-person learning. The third and probably one of the most important pieces is the actual use of data. And that's one of the things I think that we've tried to be incredibly consistent about, is to use the science and the data to help to drive our decisions. It's something that educators are amazing at. We look at student data, we look at community data, we do this every single day to help inform instruction and the work that we're doing. It is not going to be any different from what we are doing in order to be able to help to support our school leaders as they are thinking about bringing their students back into a hybrid model. And so what that means is that we are going to rely on our county level data, but we're not going to do that alone. When we first had this conversation back in July, at the end of July, we talked about the county level data as a starting point. And that was because we had had no students in school for a very long time at that point in time, and we needed to have a place to start. Now, however, because we have had our students in a variety of ways, whether that's in person or in a hybrid model, for a variety of times and transitioned in a number of instances, we also know that we have data that's going to give us additional information. One of those points of data is going to then, in addition to that county level data, is going to come from influenza-like illnesses, and really looking at each school's population and identifying in that school, are we seeing a spread? Is there 5% of the population that has influenza-like illnesses or has some type of COVID-19 symptoms? It also then prompts a conversation. It's not an automatic 5% you move to a different learning model. It means you have to have a conversation with your local public health, your regional support teams, and the Minnesota Department of Health to identify what that means. And so within that, then it is possible that, again, in a really laser-like approach, we have the opportunity to have one school in a school district that has many schools to say this school does have 5%. We are seeing spread, and so that is one school that needs to transition from a hybrid model to a distance learning model, but none of the other schools are impacted in that district because they are not seeing that. So the use of the county level data continues to be an important component, but it is not the singular point of data, and that additional data is going to help to really give us a laser approach to being able to identify how it is that we can continue to support our schools and leaders across the state. We are also thinking about the capacity of our staff. In some instances, we have seen where staff, because of their illness, has been a reason that we have not been able to keep students in person. And so moving, again, to utilizing this type of data as well as looking at staff capacity is another really important component that we're going to continue to be able to lift up in this process. And so we are just really excited about having the opportunity to do the very best work consistently for our students and for our staff. And again, because of the work that you've been able to do as a state, we are now able to do something very differently. And we'd like to thank our school leaders and across the state, from classrooms to lunchrooms, custodial staff, bus drivers, right, paraprofessionals, everyone who has been working not only in person and in a hybrid model, but also in a distance learning model to support our students. We are deeply grateful, and we are super excited that if you have not yet had the opportunity to be in person, we are hopeful that you now have the opportunity to do so. And with that, I would like to pass it over to the Lieutenant Governor. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mueller. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm really happy to be here. You know, Minnesota has worked hard to slow the spread of COVID-19. We have dug deep and we've made sacrifices. And the folks, I think, who've made the most sacrifices have been our students. I want to take a moment and just recognize those sacrifices of those students. Distance learning has been a necessary step to keep students and teachers and communities, school staff safe. But it's come with enormous challenges as well. We know that students learn best when they're in person and with their teachers. We're in a strong position to protect our teachers and our students while improving education outcomes across the state, and it is critical that we do just that. I'm incredibly grateful for the work of the Minnesota Department of Education, school leadership, teachers, parents, and students who have all worked together to make this moment possible. While I stand before you as the Lieutenant Governor, as the Governor mentioned, most importantly, I am here as a mom of a second grader. My daughter went back to school in person a few weeks ago, and it has changed everything for my family. I'll be honest, I was pretty nervous those first few days. It felt like her first day of kindergarten, and I thought about her all day long when you just worry about your child being okay. But the smile on her face and the energy that she brought back home with her, I have to say, made it all worth it. It takes support from the state to make sure that schools have access to testing and PPE, and slowly but surely, and we think we're getting more doses here to teachers next week, to the vaccine, to increase safety for all of these environments. It takes leadership and clear communication at the district and school levels to build a plan that keeps teachers and staff and students safe and in the classroom. And it takes caution and responsibility from parents to reinforce those public health measures we know so well, to include them at home to minimize the possibility of exposure. But I will tell you that it is absolutely worth it to see the sparkle back in my girl when she comes home from school. The announcement today is not a finish line, but an ongoing commitment that we have to our students and that we have to each other. It's a partnership between school leadership, teachers, and families, and those of us who work at the state level to make it all work. We cannot let our guards down. Wear a mask, keep physical distance from others, and avoid indoor crowded spaces. Get a test if you need or want one, and get your vaccine when you are eligible. That's how we keep our kids back in school and keep them in the classroom. And one of the things that is a really powerful part of what we get to do here is to work directly with students and hear from them. So I am very excited that we have a high school senior who is with us today. Owatonna High School senior Lane Verstag. Please come on up and share your story with us. Welcome, Lane. Come on up.
Thank you very much. As I ended my junior year online, I couldn't help but be excited for the beginning of my senior year. At the time, there wasn't a doubt in my mind that my classmates and I would be walking the halls of our high school together this fall. And although some exciting months of my junior year had been interrupted, I was still hopeful for the experiences my next year of high school had in store. Little did I know, however, just how serious this pandemic would be. As COVID became more and more real, my expected return to school grew farther and farther away. By last year's September, I had all but given up on my senior year. I had accepted it as lost. And although I am grateful for the countless hours my teachers have put in to make distance or hybrid learning as good as possible, nothing can replace the memories made with friends during high school. I was longing for just one more bus ride with my teammates, just one more rush of anticipation before stepping onto a concert stage, and hoping for not just a senior prom, but a first prom. Now, as vaccines roll out, and the end of this pandemic feels closer than ever before, I am reminded of the excitement I was experiencing 12 months ago. With the governor's new direction, I am eager for the opportunity to share the walls of my high school with my classmates one last time. And although the end of my senior year may not be as traditional as I had hoped, I know that my grade will get to experience it in the most important way possible, together. And with that, thank you. I'd like to introduce Superintendent Matt Gross.
Well done. Everybody in Minnesota is crying.
Yeah, that's a tough act to follow, Lane. I appreciate those words. My name is Matt Gross. I'm privileged to serve as the superintendent for the Grand Rapids and Big Fork School District in northern Minnesota. And this is an exciting day for schools and students like Lane across the state. And I just want to thank the governor for his leadership and this hopeful day, and also for prioritizing our education staff through the testing and through the vaccination. So thank you. We've appreciated the focus on science and data. That's what we're about as educators. And we've also thought it was important that we've learned. As we've known better and learned more, we do better. And so we want to just acknowledge that too. We've seen the effects of being away from school on students like Lane. And for some students it's worked fine, but for others it's been very, very difficult. And students that are away from the relationships and the sense of belonging that really only happens in school. It's easy to see that in the lives of our littlest learners, but it's real for our teenagers too. And that's why today is so important. Some districts like mine have been fortunate to be able to have students in person this year for many, many days. And there are some students, like Deputy Commissioner mentioned, that have been in school all year. And our facilities, different community viral conditions, and an ability to emphasize mitigation strategies made those possible. Since the beginning, we've seen how the virus affects communities differently, and it's affected districts differently. And my colleagues, school leaders across the state, haven't been any different in their desire to have students in person. It's just been different in their ability to. They have different district dynamics, and their facilities are different. And so the message today, the announcement today, will open those doors and create opportunities that we need and have moving forward. Our community's been patient as we've worked through the transitions between in-person learning for most of the fall into hybrid and then into a time of distance learning and now back again to in-person since the beginning of January. And we've had partners and help from our people in our communities like the local public health and our regional support teams to do that. Like across the state, our teachers, our principals, our education staff have needed to be resilient and courageous and flexible as we've worked together to get kids back in school. And it wasn't easy and it was challenging at times, but we all know how important it is and we all know it's the right thing to do. The school year's been hard for many, including school administrators, and as we see and feel the pain that our staff feel and our students feel longing to get back in school, we want to make sure that we're doing our part to keep our communities safe. And these school leaders are not just superintendents and principals and directors. In many cases, we're dads and moms and neighbors and community members, and we want to do this right. We care deeply for our communities, and we want to make things as safe as we can. Today's announcement is one of hope. It's exciting, and I'd encourage our communities, our parents, to be patient as districts fine-tune these plans, as they create models that are going to be able to bring more kids back as safely as possible. Your superintendents, your school leaders want to get this right. They want to keep communities safe. The vision of One Minnesota that our governor laid out is one of unity, and success for every district, for every school, for every student is a part of that vision. And schools like mine, where we've been able to have students in person, and places where they've been able to have students in person all year, we stand ready to help however we can to make that happen. Thank you. With that, I'd like to introduce an amazing colleague of mine, Dr. Teresa Battle.
Thank you, Superintendent Gross. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Dr. Teresa Battle, the proud superintendent of Burnsville, Egan, Savage, District 191. Thank you, Governor Walz, for inviting me here today. This fall, I believe the amazing students and staff of 191 did a wonderful job in implementing our hybrid learning model. We took it slow. We followed the science. We began with a rolling start for 4,100 students enrolled in hybrid, where pre-K through second grade students attended 4 days in person and 1 day in distance learning. And students in grades 3 through 12 attended for 2 days in person and 3 in distance learning. We also had 3,500 students enrolled in our virtual academy. A survey of parents conducted in early November showed that they felt most positive about their and their students' experience in District 191. Because of the health and safety measures implemented, improvement to distance learning from that emergency distance learning last spring, the connections with teachers and support staff, and most importantly, acknowledging and understanding the disproportionate impact of COVID-19 on Black, Indigenous, and people of color. So today, this marks an exciting opportunity to bring more students back in person. I am grateful for the support from the Minnesota Department of Health, Minnesota Department of Education in developing the Minnesota Safe Learning Plan. As community spread of COVID-19 increased dramatically in November, we returned to full distance learning for pre-K-12 students. But 2 weeks ago, our pre-K-2 students began attending in person 5 days a week. And on Monday, we welcomed our 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders back to in person. Everyone is happy to see our pre-K-5 students in person in our halls and classrooms again. Students are ecstatic about being back as well. So with case rates decreasing, our ongoing commitment to safety protocols and a steady increase in vaccinations, I'm pleased that our district will bring middle and high school students back to a hybrid learning model. I'm confident that we'll be able to be successful in providing education and support services to students as we move towards spring. and I'm hopeful that we'll be able to keep students in school over the final months of this year. So I want to thank my amazing staff, amazing students and parents for trusting us through educating through a pandemic, and our community and our school board for your support. And now I'll turn it over to Governor Walz for final remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Battle, Superintendent Gross, Lane, and to Minnesotans. If you're like me, I think listening to these amazing leaders and listening to Lane, the tears of joy that I could feel in this very small room with of people probably being felt across Minnesota. This has been hard, been unprecedented in a century that the world's seen this, and it's been tragic. The deaths of nearly 500,000 Americans lost their lives in this, and the tragedies that came with it. And it felt like we have always been on the defense, which we were. I used that football analogy of a goal line stand in November. We did it and we held, and now we got the ball. It's time for us to go on offense. It's time for us to continue to beat this thing down, to get our children back in there. And for Minnesotans, during a time of so much division, I think there's a few things that we all agree on. We love our children dearly and value them more than anything else. We all agree that getting them back in school is our absolute goal. And now we have the tools and the partnerships to do so safely. This is a milestone, and it's a milestone that came with, as we said, a lot of sacrifice, but it's the right direction. We're going to go over and take some questions from the press. I'm just going to remind folks, staying vigilant. Making sure that we know for families that health issues, for teachers and things like that, these are all being taken into consideration. As Dr. Mueller so clearly indicated, this is going to require a lot because we're going to have to continue to be able to provide those opportunities for folks. But here's the thing, what we have learned, whether it's the transmission of COVID, the infection rates, how we deal with it and suppress it, the one thing we know is that time and time again, COVID was not being spread in communities from the school. It was coming from the community into the schools. And so if you want to make sure that your school district stays in there, it's doing those things like masking. Do it for the kids. Do it for them to make sure they're there. I know it's a pain. I'm sick of it too. But it works. The science is behind it. Social distance. We're moving back and forth. Use the testing. We have the most robust testing in the country. And for those of us and those at the Minnesota Department of Health and others that still are deeply concerned about the spread of the new variants, the way you beat it is testing, find it quickly, and isolate. That is more important now than it's ever been. Make sure you know where you're at, what you're doing, and if you do something or you forget or you think you've been exposed, we have COVID Aware on your phone app. You can go and get that test. And I would encourage all of you as you see this, the vaccine is safe. It's being widely distributed. It was tested to the highest standards. And this is truly, it's not a miracle, it's science, but it's having incredible positive impacts. So let's roll up our sleeves, Minnesota. Let's fight this final last part of this thing. Let's get excited and see that and know that we're doing it for our children. And every day can get just a little bit prouder to be a teacher myself, to know what the work that's been done to make sure that my child and Lieutenant Governor's child and every child across this state had an opportunity. These educators want to be with their students more than anybody, and we owe it to them to make sure they do it safely. That's what this plan does. We'll continue to work together on this in Minnesota. Been a long year, but today is one of the days we've been looking for. We're headed in the right direction. We'll go over and take some questions about this and about some public safety issues that are kind of on the docket, and start executing our plans. Thank you.
This has been a WDIO News Special Report.